So Trump is doing reciprocal tariffs, and reciprocal tariffs are where uh, he is essentially kind of getting back at other countries for putting tariffs on the goods and products and commodities and things that we export. He's getting back at them. So when we as businesses are importing products and natural resources, he's putting tariffs on them. And the problem though, his perspective is, well, we're not getting a fair deal as Americans. We have very low tariffs, so things can come into our country from other countries, and they pay very little. But what about American goods? Buy American, support American, manufacture, da da da. That's what he's saying, right? So he pretty much looked at the tariffs that other countries have on American exports. So products that America is selling overseas or abroad, different categories of products. He looked at uh essentially whatever their number is. He just took half of that number and slapped it on and said, boom, you're charging us 40%, we're gonna charge you 20%. You're charging us 96%, we're gonna charge you 40 something percent. That's literally what he did. Okay. He calls them reciprocal tariffs. So on the outskirt, it seems like it makes sense, right? It seems like, hey, that doesn't seem fair. People are selling goods and services, and where someone's charging people that are buying American goods overseas are paying way more than what they would pay if we import the goods from that country here. So it seems like it makes sense. But, and we went over import and exports. We went over tariffs during our prior lessons. Uh, but the supply chain means the connectivity and linking between products and services being manufactured and created across multiple uh, sometimes multiple industries. So if I were to buy an iPhone, how did I get that iPhone in my hand, right? So, microchips and cobalt and gold and silver and other type of silicon and all these things that go into the manufacturing of the iPhone, and then people in California on their computers thinking of new cool creative ideas for products. Uh, all that is how do you get all that together? So who supplies that? What's the chain or link of suppliers, resources, inventory, products to create that? So it's called a supply chain, right? So when you look at the supply chain of what's happening, it's more complicated than saying, let's just slap some tariffs. Hey, Thailand says 96%, slap some tariffs. There's a relationship between Thailand and Vietnam and how America does business with them because it ties into Chinese markets. China might have a really high uh, uh, tariff on American goods, but that may not necessarily apply in other Asian countries that are nearby, where people know they can just buy those goods in other countries and bring them back because of the cross relationship. And companies know that. Automobile companies know this. So putting tariffs on certain countries actually interferes with some of the strategies that American companies are using based upon the global dynamics, the global economics of things. And then the other reality is that one of the reasons why America doesn't have big tariffs on imports is because that's actually what it makes America one of the most strategically attractive countries to do business with. So people want to do business with America because they can sell everything to America. And Americans want to buy stuff with no tariffs because it's cheap and it gives us a manufacturing advantage. And that we can buy things as cheap as possible. We're good at manufacturing, we're good at creating, we're good at outsourcing. Let's use our skills and abilities, America's might, economic might, to take advantage of that. So, contrary to the idea, well, it's not fair. People are charging us a lot of tariffs and they get to sell in our country for no tariffs, that's actually that's the American advantage, is that you want to sell in America. You want your dollars, your products, your services, your economic commerce coming into America. And then Americans are buying your stuff for cheap to have a competitive advantage to create something cheaply. Sounds like a Trump word, right? Cheaply. Cheap. So then they can manufacture and sell. But then when they're selling, that's where the issue is, right? What are the tariffs that are being applied to American products? But then you have to ask yourself, and we went over this last time in person, what are those tariffs? Why are there tariffs, right? Because literally, if America can do something cheaper and more efficiently, and then utilize global resources, buy steel from one area, buy raw supplies from another country, manufacture in another country, ship the goods to that country, really figure out have your jeans sewed and made in Sri Lanka. The fabric comes from Japan, whatever. You know, we figure that out. How do we make this as effective and as cheap as possible and most profitable? Then the American good comes to America, and then we sell American jeans. You think it's fancy designer or whatever, and it was made for pennies on the dollar in some other country because of exploitation of cross labor, the labor costs. So all that's factored into these tariff costs. All that's factored into why a country may put higher or lower tariffs on specific products, because how it endangers or threatens their economics or their economy. It's not always retaliatory, like, oh, let's just charge Americans lots of money, right? It's that if America sells that product for really cheap in our country, they could kind of put our industries out of business. So and then it's byproduct type, right? So it might not even be a complete product. Tariffs can apply to differently for manufactured goods, differently for the type of good, differently for raw materials. It's not one bill fits the measure. It's very complicated. It's very complicated. So one of the main advantages of America is literally it being like this open economy where you can just bring money, you could just sell stuff. And America's like, yeah, sell your stuff here. We're, you know, the big eagle flying around with red, white, and blue, freedom, capitalism, that's America. So it plays into the economic strength of America, not to mention the dollars. It's called the Bretton Woods. America's currency was used as as the sort of the dollar. The American dollar was used as a form of international, like countries would hold the American dollar in terms of currency exchange and trade. It was pegged to the American dollar. Uh, that was back when the American dollar was pegged to gold, the gold standard. And then we came off the gold standard maybe in the 70s, 71 or something. I don't remember the exact date. And the American dollar has been purely a fiat currency. But for many years, other countries would hold American dollars in their reserves. And I would say maybe not until maybe the last 14, 15 years, since America's been throwing more tariffs on sanctions against Russia, have you seen sort of a shift where, well, America is sanctioning Russia, but like a lot of countries buy stuff from Russia. They don't have beef with Russia. So then how does that work if you're holding American dollars, but there's sanctions on a country that you buy, petrol from, that you buy wheat from, other products from? So you see globally, the central banks of a lot of countries, they're holding more gold reserves and less US dollars. So what that means is that the global dependency on America is thinning. And with these new tariffs, the fact that America has a country with low tariffs, I mean, what's the benefit of me holding a US dollar, US currency? doing business in America, period. Right? So uh, we went over inflation before. I'll touch base on inflation again. Inflation is, and the reason why I'm mentioning inflation is because it ties into what we're discussing, right? So I told you guys at the very beginning of the semester, I said, look at the price of gold. I said it's going to go up. That's what I told you guys. I said the price of gold is going to go up. I'm just pulling up the price real quick. And I told you it's because if President Trump passed these tariffs, it's going to create a lot of issues. And you're going to see commodities. You're going to see some movement in the commodities market. In actuality, commodities dropped in value. Commodities are like goods, like raw goods, iron, steel, copper, things of that sort, things that you use to manufacture. Gold, although, is sometimes used as a hedge against issues. So gold right now is uh 31 $3,138. At the beginning of the semester, gold was like 20, I think when we were talking, it was like 20, I could tell you right now. The beginning some gold was $2,700, $2,700. Gold is now $3,100. Huge increase, right? And I told you so. Your professor told you so that this was going to happen if these things happen because the definitions you're learning in your textbook, they're definitions, but the fundamentals of it helps you understand what's going on. So imagine if you bought gold. Remember we were in class and I showed you guys gold and little gold bullion trinkets and a gram of gold. You could buy a gram of gold for like $80 or something. It went up in value, right? So the things we're discussing are these aren't just definitions, guys. This is how big powerful players make money is by understanding what this stuff means and how they utilize it to make big bucks. Okay. So if you had $100 million in your bank account and I said go buy gold, guys, and you bought it, you you would have made like what 30 million, $20 million, right? So I'm touching on inflation because gold is tied to inflation. Inflation is the devaluing of your dollar. That's what it means. Your purchasing power is being devalued with inflation. So I mentioned that because that's what is going to happen next. Because of what's going on with the tariffs, we're going to have what's called an inflationary waves of inflation. There's been you don't have the data, but just trust me, the data. There's been about, I think, one, two, three waves or four waves of inflation that's hit the US over the last century. 1920s, I think 1940s and 1970s. And waves of inflation are where your purchasing power decreases. Uh, the wave would be, more than 6% inflation. So example, you go to the grocery store, you look at what eggs are now versus what they were before. You look at the cost of beef now versus what it was 10 years ago. It's almost 40%, 50% more. That's inflation. It's not going to go back down, guys. It's here to stay. And I've said that before. So what that means is we're going to have another wave of inflation because of the tariffs. So we're going to have this first wave, which already passed. Things are more expensive. We're going to have a second wave of inflation that's going to hit. So things are going to become more expensive. Another wave of you trying to buy something at a store and it's more expensive than it was yesterday because of the tariffs. The other issue is when you have waves of inflation, so a big inflation hits very strongly, then you have another wave of inflation, the likelihood of a recession triggering is like 86%, or it's really high if you look at the statistics. So we're at a very, very, very high likelihood of hitting a recession. If you want to know what a recession means, just to remind you, recession means that financially, the market, the economy is in a bad position. That's what it means. People lose jobs, companies cut back on, aren't making profits. They cut back on employees, that type of stuff. People miss their bills, can't make their mortgage payment. It's a downward decline in our economic situation, the U.S. economy. So this is putting us at big risk. And literally, Donald Trump was talking about his tariffs at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live. And the stock market was physically, the futures market was physically tanking from 4 to 4:30 while he's talking because of what that means, right? So these things have a permanent effect. You rarely see deflation occur. Deflation would be the opposite, where your money has more purchasing power. It's the complete opposite. So once we've had a lot of inflation, you're going to see another wave of inflation hit. Even when you pull back the tariffs, if we trigger a recession, the inflation is going to stay to some degree, which means your purchasing power, the value of your money will erode over time. It's going to be hard to save. Gen Z is always complaining they can't afford to buy a home because their salaries don't match the asset prices or the values of properties. Because properties have gotten more expensive, salaries have not kept up correlatively or togetherly with it. So what you're seeing unfold, we're learning these definitions in the textbook, and then what you're physically seeing unfold is actually the truth of what the measurements of what you're learning. You're learning these definitions, and this is what's going on. So what does it mean for you guys? Um, watch the video. I posted in the announcements. Okay, watch the video. If you don't want to do the extra credit, that's fine. You should do it. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. But watch the video. Okay, so the video, I posted the video because it pertains to exactly what I'm telling you. What is happening right now in your current events? That video goes over what's happened in the 1700s in France, what's happened in the blah, 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 ancient times. Not ancient, but old times. And it shows you the same things we're talking about. We're going through inflation. What happens during inflationary times? How do other type of commodities and assets change and how these things correlate? Right? The video focuses on silver and gold, but watch the video, okay? Because you're living it. You're watching a video. He's talking about something that happened in the 1700s, and that's happening now in 2025. And the same dynamics that guy is talking about in the video, it's the same thing that's going to happen. The same thing. Okay? The same things that go up in value, the same things that go down in value, the same thing's going to happen. Okay? So watch the video because it's happening today while you guys are students. This is going to happen again 20, 30 years from now, 15 years from now. It's gonna happen again. This is secular. It's in your textbook. The economic cycles are they go through cycles. So this is going to happen again. And you're going to be in your 30s or 40s and it's going to happen again. You're going to be in your 50s and 60s and it's going to happen again. And the same stuff is going to happen. Everything's going to get more expensive. This item increases in value. Gold goes up in value. Stocks and bonds decrease in value. It's the same cycle over and over and over and over. And the cycle is the way it is because of the economic mechanisms that are in place due to the fiscal or financial structure of our economy. It's unescapable. It's the world's destiny because we are using the currency of central banks, financial intermediaries that provide our currency, the Federal Reserve. The way they are structured, the banking cartel is structured, designates and dictates that this is the reality of how economic cycles work. That's why it's in your textbooks. It's been studied, it's understood. Doctors and PhDs, this is what it is. So be aware of it, okay? Because it affects the food on your plate. It affects the jobs you can get, the job you can keep, the savings in your account, the ability to buy a home, to buy a car, to have a retirement fund. live like you're in school to get an education, to get a degree, to get a job. This stuff affects that. All right. So I'm telling you here today so you understand, oh, what's going on, because no one else is going to tell you this. Okay. They'll just fire you or give you a pay cut, and then you just okay, whatever. My professor said I should watch this video on gold and whatever. I said, yeah. So I'm telling you what's going to happen, okay? We're going to have more inflation. Gold will continue to go up in price, even though it should not, it should go down because of what's going on. It's going to go up because inflation is going to go up and people are going to flee to gold. The stock market is going to go down because it's going to trigger recessionary fears. So people are going to panic. Doesn't mean it's the recession's happening. It's just what's going to happen. But even if all that stuff happens before, mark my words, is being recorded, before Donald Trump leaves presidency, we will have a full-blown recession. Okay? It's on the record. So
I have a
that's gonna, yeah, that's on the record. Okay. What's happening is just what he's doing, what he's happening. It's like taking a wounded horse and it needs time to heal his leg, and he's just beating the leg. Come on, move faster. He he's beating that leg. It's like, he's before Donald Trump came into office, there were already concerns about us, maybe the American economy being in a recessionary fears a recessionary fears of that happening. That was before he became president. It had nothing to do with him being president. It was just us being in a long-term market, a bull market for since 2008, 2009. So 17 years, we've been this long, 16, 17 years, we've been this long cycle of economic growth and development. And it's slowing down. The inflation's hit hard the last couple of years. So there's a concern that we're tipping at the top of the market and we might have a recession. So the US economy is not necessarily at risk prior to Trump coming to office, but it definitely and certainly uh, was some warning signs maybe within the next 2 years. And what he's doing, he's kind of putting he's putting the car on nitro and blasting it off. So he's really putting a strain on the American economy at a time when you really shouldn't be doing that. So uh it's going to affect everybody, right? But if you're the guy that bought gold 9 weeks ago, you would have made a lot of money, right? So what I'm saying is that uh our whole economy can I don't want to say crash and burn, but our whole economy could tank suddenly. That doesn't mean there isn't someone else making money. That doesn't mean there is an opportunity. So what I'm also teaching you and showing you is that opportunity and decline it's all subjective. It's just understanding the economic positioning of what's happening in the economy. It's understanding what measurements and levers pull this way and that way, and being able to make an assessment and say, well, uh, you know, do this or do that. I just had my client text me like 30 minutes ago. She said, thank you. I appreciate you. That's what she told me. So I told her, I said, pull all your money out of the market. I said, go to cash. She did it. And all her friends are freaking out. And she's like, oh, right. So uh, I don't know how to motivate you to do your work, but what I'm trying to motivate you is that this is real stuff. So learn it, understand it. It ties into your well-being and success. Yeah, guys, have any questions before I continue? That's just a tie back on some of the things we're talking about. No questions? Okay. So I'm going to touch a little bit on chapter 11. We did chapter 10. We did go over HR a little bit prior. Uh, the most important thing here with chapter 11 is the definitions, right? So your final exam is week 15 is when you take your final exam. I may open up the exam earlier, final. If I do, I'll just shoot an email to inform you on announcements to give you a little more time. But pretty much everything after chapter 7, so from chapter 8 and on, is the finals. Anything chapter 7 and before is the midterm. So you don't have to worry about that unless you haven't taken the midterm yet. But for the final, that's what you have to focus on. So this material here, the most important things to focus on are the definitions, right? So I always tell you that when you're taking your exams, focus on the definitions. If you open up your textbook and you look at the chapter 11, you'll see there's definitions. That's pretty much what the exam is. So know the definitions. Okay. So chapter 11 is dealing with sort of the nature of human resource management, equal employment opportunity, the 1972 Equal Opportunity Act is to strengthen equal employment opportunity commission to give it broader powers. So things like this definition, what is the 1972 Equal Employment Opportunity Act? That's something that you would see on your exam, right? What is the OFCCP? Things of that sort. So you see our test prep. These are examples here. So human resources. Okay, so I'm going to focus a little more on the reality of this versus the material. So you should definitely read the chapter, read the material, read the definitions. But I want to focus more on the human resources itself as it pertains to you as an employee. A company's human resources is for the sole purpose of managing its employees. It's being compliant. It's focusing in a way, in a manner whereby you are a resource and not a liability to the company. So the HR component of a company is not really for your benefit as the employee. It's for the benefit of the company. Okay, it's for their ability to manage you or to manage its employees. Okay. None of it has anything to do with the equality of a circumstance. It's the reality of them being able to manage you. Hopefully that makes sense to what I'm saying. In that, I had a friend who sold HR packages, human resource packages to companies. So he would set up, their company would set up and provide the human resource structure for their company. He told me the number one selling package, number one selling human resource package was the package where they would, the way he described it was sort of churn them and burn them. You would bring in fresh staff. You wouldn't tenure the staff or the employees. You'd cycle them out. You'd manage them out. Because that way you would never have to give them benefits. They'd set it up where you have to maybe be an employee for a couple of years to get pension and stuff like that. So instead of bringing in employees and having them stay on board, they would bring employees and figure out ways to get rid of them or cycle them out and bring in new employees because it saved money on the benefits. So sometimes the HR strategies are not really equitable to you. It's how it's equitable to the employer, unfortunately. So one of the advices I would say is if you have a union, if you're working for a company and that company has a union and you have any grievances or issues, don't talk to your manager. Yeah. Talk to your union first and get advice on them on what to do. Assuming you have a good union. Not all unions are good. Before bringing up your grievance. And I know people don't like me saying that, but this is the truth. Okay? Don't talk to your HR, don't talk to your manager, talk to your union first. Talk to your union rep, discuss the circumstances, situation. They'll advise you on what to do. They'll go over the contracts and stuff of that sort. Remember that. That may save your butt in the future as a future employee. Okay? I just kind of want to touch base on this here, and then I will call it. Uh, Management development is an important part of human resources, and management development is defined as the process of training and educating employees to become uh, good managers, and then monitoring the progress of their managerial skills over time. It's important to realize that management can at times be difficult to deal with, but also at times it's hard to understand what is required of management. And a lot of the HR reciprocation ties to management process. Uh, what a manager is entitled to do, what they should do, and how they should follow through. It's important to understand that there's that direct relationship between management and HR. So, guys, do you have any questions before I end it here?
No.
If not,
Yeah, I'm good.
okay. So, guys, if you have any questions, uh, shoot me an email. We have class next week, but the week after is the spring break. Okay.